Okay, I think we got everything now.
Yep.
Okay.
Let me go back to putting in the date.
All right. And you have the phone number that's part of
Yes,
that?
I got that all here. Stand by.
I'm all right. Call tonight's meeting to order, and it's a Town of Queensbury regular town board meeting. It's November 16th, 2020. The time is 7:02 p.m. And I'll lead the Pledge of Allegiance. If you all please stand and join me. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, everybody. On the agenda, the first item is to go into a local board of health. We have 4 items to deal with tonight. And is there a motion to move into the Queensbury local board of health?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilperson Ferone, seconded by Councilperson Freer. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. We're in the Queensbury Local Board of Health. We are going to shift item 1 to the last item because there's public comment, and I'll reserve that, and we'll get the other ones out of the way. So we're going to go to 1-2. If you'll introduce that to the public, please, Rose.
Yes, this is a continuation of a public hearing on sewage disposal variance application of Roberta Kahn.
Okay. Originally, this is for a septic system on 61 Knox Road. There was some concerns by a neighbor of potential damage of tree roots and trees. So we met there, talked it over with the neighbor, talked it over with the applicant and engineer for Roberta Kahn, who owns 61 Knox Road. And we had a public hearing on this, and the public hearing's still open. But we've made some changes, and I think that the neighbors the changes will be more to their liking. Instead of 4 variances, this proposed change only requires 1 variance, that the absorption bed be 2 foot from the south side of the property line instead of the required 10-foot setback. So if you want to elaborate further, Dennis?
Yes, thank you. I'm Dennis McElroy with Environmental Design, representing Roberta Kahn for this Board of Health wastewater variance for their property. As explained, this is a replacement wastewater system. The Kahans are an elderly couple thinking forward to a point of transfer at some point to their next generation, so they want to have a replacement system in place, at least approved and in place for construction as needed. So we've provided a design on a tight area. It required some setback variances, and as indicated, the neighbor to the north had some initial concerns about trees that were along the property line. So in order to accommodate that, the Kahans have chosen to a placement of the septic tank that would absolutely require a large tree removal on their property to avoid some potential for damage to the root system of trees that are on the property line. So, you know, for the record, I'd indicate that the owners have stepped up to do something that would accommodate that other concern. So that reduces the variances just to the property on the south side, and my understanding that the owner to the south is supportive of the proposal, and they'd like to move forward with this revision to the application.
Are any questions from the board before I return to the public hearing?
No, Dennis, I don't know if you're aware that we got an email where the neighbor to the north said he's removing his objections, that he was okay with all the changes in it.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this application for sanitary sewage disposal? It's a variance request, and it's for Roberta Kahan at 61 Knox Road. Is there anybody here tonight that wishes to speak to this? Is there anybody that's watching YouTube and you want to do the call-in? You have to have caller ID. I have to be able to identify you. And the number is area code 518-761-8225. Now, while I'm doing that, is there anybody who's watching this through Zoom? Please indicate your interest in speaking to this particular application for sanitary sewage disposal variance for Roberta Kahan on 61 Knox Road. One variance is being requested, and that is the absorption field to be 2 foot from the south side property line instead of required 10 foot. Seeing no interest from Zoom, hearing no call-ins, nobody of the public present wishes to speak to this application. I'll entertain a motion to approve if it exists.
So moved.
All right, moved by Councilperson Freer, seconded by Councilperson Medevere. Roll call vote on this, please, Rose.
Councilperson Freer.
Yes.
Barone.
Yes.
McGee is absent. Stroud.
Yes,
And Medevere.
Yes.
all right,
Great, thank you very much.
thank you. All right, the next two are to set the public hearing. Would you introduce the first one, 1.3, as it's listed on our agenda item?
It's a resolution setting a public hearing on sewage disposal variance application of Michael Grasso.
All right, Tom Hutchins is the agent and engineer for this particular application, and they are asking for two variances from the sewage disposal code, and that is variance 1, that the septic tank be placed 3 foot from the house instead of the required 10-foot setback. And the second variance is, for the septic tank, is 40 foot from the well instead of the required 50-foot setback. That's for the septic tank. This is to set the public hearing on this application for December 7th. And this is for Mike Grasso at 23 Rappaport Drive. And again, for setting the public hearing for December 7th. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
Moved by Councilperson Ferrell,
I'll second.
seconded by Councilperson Medevere. Roll call vote on setting the public hearing for Mike Grasso.
Councilperson Barone.
Yes.
Stroud.
Yes.
Medevere.
Yes.
And Freer.
Yes.
All right, that passes. Next is agenda item 1.4, and
Resolution.
that too is to set a public hearing.
Sorry.
Go
It's
ahead.
a resolution setting a public hearing on sewage disposal variance application of Dave Barlow.
All right, Dave Barlow lives on 18 Ward Lane. That's a little lane that is opposite Hannaford Road, and it's off of 9L, over by Hannaford Road. And what they would like to do, because of their geographic conditions over there, is just put in holding tanks, 2 1,500-gallon holding tanks. 18 Ward Lane, owned by Dave Barlow. This is to set a public hearing for this on December 7th. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
Moved by Councilperson Freer,
I'll second.
seconded by Councilperson Medavir. Roll call vote, setting this public hearing, please.
Councilperson Stroud,
Yes.
Medavir.
Yes.
Freer,
Yes.
and Ferraro.
Yes.
Okay. Next is 1.1, and many members of the public are here to speak to this, so that's why I put it last. But we'll give you the opportunity to speak in a minute. Would you please introduce it to the public?
This is a public hearing on sewage disposal variance application of Chris Abel, Rockhurst LLC.
All right, Abley, rather. Yeah, well, it's 10 Polk Road, which is off of Assembly Point Road. And they're asking for two variances. The absorption bed is to be 5 foot from the property lines to the required 10-foot setback, and 70 feet from Lake George instead of the required 100-foot setback. We talked to the engineer in this application, and they are going to try and engineer some changes. But the absorption system is a PuraFlow heat fever biofilter system. And, but there are probably going to be changes, so we're not going to act on this tonight. It's the agreement with the board, I think. But we do want to listen to what the public comments are on this. Dennis, I don't know if you want to speak to this at this time?
I think Dennis left, actually.
He left?
He left.
Yeah.
All right. Because he's gonna do some work on this. But
Are you asking if you want to talk?
I haven't yet.
Oh, you did.
Who's fault?
Who, John?
Yeah.
No problem, I know. Now, I will give everyone the opportunity to speak to this. And so we have 3 formats going in our effort to try and be as open and transparent as we possibly can. One is we have the public, and they're socially distant and they have their masks on. If you're sitting down and you're socially distant, you can have the option of removing your mask. If you come up here and you're by yourself, you can remove your mask, but you have to return it when walking around in the room. I also have YouTube going on, and YouTube can do call-ins. At the appropriate time, I'll mention when I would like you to do the call-in. The call-in is area code 518-761-8225. And then we also have a Zoom going on. It's set up as a webinar, and we have 18 attendees on that Zoom list. And there is an indicator if you wish to speak. A little blue hand usually goes up and gives me the indicator that you want to speak. I will give you the opportunity, but I'm going to go public for the present public first. All right, with members of the public who are here tonight in this building, is there anyone who would like to speak to this application from Chris Abley for sanitary sewage disposal variance for property located at 10 Polk Road? Carol, I believe you wanted to speak. She did get up first, and then I'll allow others.
Hi, my name is Carol Collins. I live on Assembly Point. And I don't want to go into the whole project. I think.
I'm sorry, Carol. can you-
Okay, take it off.
Better recording? Yeah.
Sorry. I would have put lipstick on.
You look great.
Okay. I think what I want to speak to is the performance of enhanced treatment systems. I think there's a little bit of confusion because they are a well-performing system. And I've heard the comment, do not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, to justify, putting in these systems, which I'm not opposed to an enhanced treatment system at all. But I want to let you know what the shortcomings of these systems are, and specifically the shortcomings related to phosphorus. And I think all of you know that phosphorus is the fuel-generating source of algal blooms. And we'll get onto that afterwards, but it's certainly the limiting resource in Lake George that we all need to pay attention to. And it's really the only tool we have in protecting that environment. So the ETUs do a great job in reducing things like biological oxygen demand, total suspended solids, and others, and that's great. But the big but is it doesn't remove phosphorus, okay? None of them do. That's the job of the soil absorption system, fully, totally. If you speak with engineers at Pure Flow, Claris Fusion, as I have, the information. I'd be happy to share it with you specifically. They all agree they can't do that. It's a very difficult, expensive proposition, and they leave that up to the soil absorption fields, and they strongly believe that the state's recommendations on trench length and soils are critical, and they should be observed at all costs. So I want to let you know that, because I just hear it over and over again that, hey, these things do everything. Yeah, they do, but not enough. This is a real critical issue in the New York City watershed, to make sure we preserve our soil absorption fields. And it should be in the Lake George watershed as well. So I wanted to make sure you fully understand that, because I think we're seeing a lot more requests to compromise our soil absorption fields. I think there's a couple here tonight, as a matter of fact. And specifically for this project, where there is a request to set it within 70 feet of the shoreline, I think the same applicant actually got a variance for a 76-foot setback by the board back in 2014. And certainly this is not the precedent we want for a soil absorption field located this close to Lake George. We've seen in a hazardous algal bloom this year, or I guess we call it a harmful algal bloom. They used to be called hazardous. Located right there at that site, where actually there's a number of systems that are being examined. So I think we should be particularly sensitive to this, not only for that reason, but if you look at the soil types, and anyone can do this, you just get on the NRCS site, and we look at them, and there's Messina soils and Charleston soils. One's listed as poor for sanitary systems, and the other one is listed as limited for sanitary systems. So even with those soils, they're not going to do the same job as we need them to in a better soil field. So I don't want to. I know I'm probably going to forget other things that I wanted to speak with you about here, but if I can impress upon you that this is all we've got for Lake George, is keeping these subsoil fields away from the lake. And 100 feet is recommended, and that's what we should keep it at. So I want to thank you for all the work you do.
All right.
And thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol. There was somebody over here. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Lorraine Ruffing, and I live on Assembly Point. I would like to make the following statement about the Polk Road property. This property is in what we call a critical environmental area. It's basically a wetland with two streams on either side of the property. And I believe my presentation was given to you, and you can see the stream from the pictures. 16 trees have been removed from this property, and 4 more are marked for cutting. Some trees are within 35 feet of the lake. I understand a variance was given for the purposes of enlarging the existing road. However, the road is not going to go along the shoreline. And the excessive tree cutting lakeside has limited the already minimal absorptive capacity of this area, as was just described by Carol. And this will result in the increased outflows to the lake in the 2 streams that go into the lake. This increased outflow will go into a very shallow, still bay, and it was the site of the first HABs outbreak on Lake George on the 7th of November. And as of yesterday, November 15th, the HABs were still visible in this bay. The HABs were not only on the east side of Assembly Point, that is in Harris Bay, but they encircled the entire perimeter of Assembly Point. I know because I kayaked this past Monday, that is the Monday before, the entire perimeter, and there was film covering the water. As you know, when the toxicity reaches a certain level, and we have not been told by the DEC what the exact level is in Harris Bay, it can affect liver, kidneys, and the nervous system. The HABs can impact humans and animals not only when they drink the water, but if they inhale it because it's aerosolized toxins, or if they have direct skin contact with the contaminated water when swimming or boating. So that would reduce our recreational use if we don't get our HABs under control. I see from the sketches that there are 2 septic systems that are positioned side by side, 70 feet from the lake. We don't know how many feet from the stream. The effluent which would emerge from the poor flow models or modules and disperse in the gravel pad. But this pad, as Carol explained, will be in a critical environmental area near the lake and near the stream. And what will be the absorptive capacity of this area, since it has been denuded of many trees? Additionally, the pure flow system requires a pod for each bedroom. And I see 3 pods on the sketch, and there are 4 bedrooms planned for the house. Lastly, I guess, what is the point of overhauling the town regulations and making them low-impact development if we are going to continue to give a pass to high-impact development? I think the Board of Health should take every step it can to preserve our drinking water. Therefore, I respectfully ask the Town Board and the Board of Health to reject this application and search for a more suitable solution for this critical environmental area. I believe others have recommended such solutions, such as John Caffrey and Chris Novitsky, and I think we would all be happy to discuss them in the future. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Lorraine. Yes, ma'am. Well, if I could hear you, I'd recognize what you said.
Wiping down the lake.
Oh, wiping down the lake, yes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Lorraine Carbonine, and I live at 197 Assembly Point Road. We've resided there for 6.5 years, and I thank the board for allowing me to voice my concerns. This variance application comes at a time when we, the Assembly Point residents, are on high alert for water quality threats. We're looking here at making accommodations to the town of Queensbury regulations for on-site wastewater treatment systems. The property in question is a narrow lakefront lot, and with 2 streams running roadside and along the back of the property, much of the lot often appears wet from our street view. It's certainly a fragile wetland that does not seem able to weather the development project that's proposed. Narrowing the view of this project down to the variance before us, diminishing the 100-foot setback significantly to the requested 70 feet is entirely too ambitious on a low wet lot. I question the 2 soil percolation tests performed in October of this year, which was done at the end of a very dry season. Was this the best time of year to perform these tests? Are they not supposed to be done during the wettest months of the year, so we know their minimum capacity to perform and not the best case scenario? The results obtained, 5 and 6, is this soil minimally able to perform? I would also ask the board to review the plan for this parcel of land in its entirety. There's another structure on this property. If construction is planned on that second lot overall, we'd be looking at 2 large square-foot dwellings, 2 septic systems, 2 driveways, and the trees and vegetation removal to allow all this to occur would be too much for this fragile, shallow bay to handle. The recent report just last week of a harmful algal bloom in the very bay that the property faces underlines the threat to our water supply. There are approximately 50 lakefront homes along Assembly Point Road and Bay Parkway, and most obtain their drinking water year-round from the lake. Even with basic in-home water treatment systems, many are not capable of removing the toxins found in the HABs identified last week. I realize this is a completely separate issue, but the timing is incredibly noteworthy. Now is not the time for the town to be complacent or in any way soften the standards previously set for septic requirements. And I ask you to put the health and safety of all Assembly Point residents before the gain of one overly ambitious property development. I thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine.
Supposed to wipe this down, like at the zoning, like at the ZBA?
I can't hear you.
You're supposed to wipe this down?
Yeah, you're supposed to, the last person.
After each speech.
John Caffrey from Caffrey and Flower in Glens Falls, representing Mr. and Mrs. John Kelly of Assembly Point Road.
1 second, please. John? John? Your Zoom has gone off. I don't know why it's offline. Supposed to make these public, so I wanted to make sure he was aware of that.
Yeah, it was just here. I know what it was. I plugged it in, but didn't turn the switch on down here.
I'm glad you have him under control, George.
In any event, we do have we have Look TV here. It is public, and we have YouTube. Yeah, I lost it. It's gonna take me a little while to get together. John, if you wanna wait, or do you, till I get some back up?
How long might it be?
It'll probably be about 5 minutes.
Well, it's up to you, whatever your protocol for meetings is. I know what I have to say, I want to get it on the record. I don't have to have an audience. I did want to ask, I emailed a letter in at 5 o'clock. Did you all get actual copies of the letter that I sent to Caroline Barber? Okay.
Yes.
I wanted to make sure, because I did bring hard copies also, in case you didn't. I'm sorry about the timing, but I just got onto this project recently.
Do they need to get read in? You guys read them in?
No, we just acknowledge that we have them.
On the planning board, did you have to read them in?
You don't have to on any board.
Okay,
Some boards choose to, and that's what I think you're talking
yeah.
about. It's not required at any
Okay,
board.
thank you.
But read it in. My letters are usually so long, I suggest
why
that
I was-
boards not
that's why I
read
was
them.
asking. Just have a joke to tell, just have a joke here, George Michelle, you know, and he's just moving his thing back up.
The state made a lot of changes, but it never did anything about open meeting laws, so we have to try and do what we're doing here tonight. Right?
And they made a whole lot of changes about open meeting laws, but we still have to keep doing what we're doing tonight.
Right, yeah. There we go.
Mostly because we said we didn't do it.
All right, well, I lost my participants.
Well, we're over YouTube.
Just me. Did they go over to YouTube?
I don't know matter now. We got 14 minutes.
Yeah, well, we're back.
There it is.
All right, sorry, I lost power on my laptop. We still have 11 participants, that's good. All right, John, if you would
Okay.
continue, and I'm sorry for forgetting to hit the switch.
I understand what you said about the application being revised, but I would still, so I don't know what it'll ultimately look like, but I'd still like to make the major points. There's no proof of hardship, which is required by your code. They just didn't put any in. There's nothing that appears to be any proof of special circumstances, which is another criteria supposed to be met for a variance. The variance, as the other speakers have pointed out, is potentially detrimental to Lake George, and I won't repeat what they've been saying about the harmful algae bloom. There is on the GIS system that the county maintains, it does show a wetland on this property as well as on the adjoining Hogan property. It may or may not be an APA jurisdictional wetland, but regardless of that, that's not a good sign if you want to put in a septic system to have wetlands right there. It means your water table is probably right at the surface. As somebody else pointed out, the test pits were done in the fall rather than the spring when the water's the highest. What I'd like to discuss too is that there's no proof that this is the minimum necessary variance or even that a variance for the setback from the lake is needed. They could move it backwards away from the lake. They could possibly share a system with the adjoining lot that the same person's also buying. There's a lot of alternatives that they haven't examined, which would make a variance unnecessary, and perhaps they could meet the setbacks from the lake. As somebody pointed out, the septic system for the other lot is proposed to also be within 70 feet of the lake on the shall we say, west side, towards the little shallow bay there, I suspect that it's probably also within 100 feet of the lake on the other side, on the main part of Harris Bay. That part of the plans wasn't in the application materials, but that may need 2 variances. So there's a real problem there, I think, with the setbacks and the variances. And there are alternatives too. If you have smaller houses instead of the usual McMansions that everybody builds on Lake George, once they buy an old camp, tear it down and build a McMansion. If they built a smaller house, they wouldn't need as big a septic system. Or if they only built one house on this property. This has been one property for over 100 years. If they only built one new house on it, they could still earn a reasonable return, and you wouldn't have as much of a problem siting the septic system. You wouldn't have as much other problems with overcrowding the site. I also have the impression that this thing is just being piecemealed, that first they go for the area variance from the ZBA for the road frontage issue, and I know that's in litigation and you're not going to want to discuss it, but that could throw this whole thing into back to the drawing board, or back to square one. But now we've got this variance. Obviously, there's going to be variance applications for the other property. They ought to bring the entire thing to the town at once, so we're not dealing with little bits of it all at once without getting the big picture. In fact, they told the ZBA there was no construction planned at this time, yet within a few weeks, they're out there digging and working on the drainage and cutting down trees and all that. So that was obviously misleading at best. I'm sure Mr. Medevere noticed that himself going by there. The other issue I want to bring up is seeker. There's no seeker documentation in this file. Some variances are exempt from seeker. They're type 2. That does not apply to this type of variance. That's very clear, I believe, in the DEC seeker handbook. And really the whole project, if you will, ought to go through a seeker review. It ought to be a coordinated review, even if it's an unlisted action, so that we can get the whole picture of what's being proposed here and how best to handle it. And as somebody pointed out, this is in a critical environmental area created by the Lake George Park Commission. I'm not sure if the town also has one too, but anything within 500 feet of Lake George is a seeker critical environmental area. For all of these reasons, we think this application ought to be denied. Hopefully they can come back with something that doesn't create so many problems, but I'm not going to hold my breath. One thing I want to point out that applicants often say, well, this is going to be better than what's there. The septic systems for those little cottages and stuff, I understand, are rudimentary at best, but that's not the point. It's about going forward, making it the optimal system that does not require any variances, that is going to achieve treatment, that not just to compare it to what's there, because you can always say that. The point is to make it be the best possible system that'll protect the lake. So, one last question. If this is going to be tabled, how are we going to get notice of future hearings? My clients don't happen to be adjoining property owners. We don't get notice. How's that going? Is this going to be publicized somehow?
Well, it would be on the agenda when it comes back, if it comes back.
But, so we'd have to look at how far in advance are they posted?
Do we have to renotice, council?
Depends on the materiality of the modifications. If the modifications are material, then it would be appropriate to renotice, because a material modification means that somebody that didn't have a concern under the current application might have a concern under the new materially modified application. If the modifications are very minor, then they don't have to be renoticed.
We'll have to wait and see what returns to us and see if the modifications are material.
Okay. Did they give any indication when they'd be coming back or what the changes might be?
They suggested that the changes might be something more in accord with the code, but they're going to investigate different possibilities. Thank you for cleaning that up.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else else present tonight that wishes to speak to this sanitary sewer disposal variance? Yes, sir. Please come forward. Identify yourself for the record.
Yes, my name is Robert Carbonine. I am a resident of 197 Assembly Point Road. Good evening, Supervisor Stroh and members of the council. I would like to go on record that I am opposed to the application for septic variance by Chris Abley, the managing member of Rockhurst LLC at 10 Polk Road in Queensbury. Variants are granted for hardship reasons, health, growing families, disabilities, etc. This is not the case in this situation. Rockhurst LLC has purchased this property with the intent to subdivide and build 2 new large homes of high value. This is purely for personal financial gain. The property was purchased knowing that a site plan review and variances would be needed. This was a gamble that Rockhurst LLC was willing to take with no guarantees of accomplishing their goal. Page 4 on the application for septic for variance says whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. The answer is it could be achieved by changing and or reducing the footprint of the home and location of the driveway. If the septic system was moved to the side of the driveway, it would be more than 100 feet from the lake and 10 feet from the property line. Question 3 on the application states whether requested area variance is substantial. I feel the answer is yes. A 30% reduction in distance to the lake and a 50% reduction in the property line setback is substantial. On that application, question 4 is whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect on the environment. Canal Bay is extremely shallow with poor circulation. It was one of the first sites to report an algal bloom. We need to plan not just for today, but to anticipate the potential long-term negative impact of this project. Since there is no periodic septic inspection program in place for waterfront residences, what if this system is not adequately maintained? Peat in the bioreactor needs to be replaced periodically. If the present or next owner is neglectful, that missing 30-foot of buffer becomes massively important. Question 5 on your application states whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. Well, yes. If the property was left as one parcel and not subdivided, a septic variance would not be needed. Mr. Abley and Rockhurst LLC are not good stewards of Lake George. Many trees have already been cut down on the property, which are critical to absorbing water and nutrients. This also has a negative impact on the wetlands that are on the property. In light of the recent hazardous algal bloom that produced toxins in the water around Harris Bay, this past week is documented by the DEC, now is not the time to be relaxing standards. My family and all the other families that draw their drinking water from the lake have a right to safe drinking water. This project, if approved, will become part of the problem we are now facing. Approving this application is a step in the wrong direction and possibly sets a precedent for similar variances in the future. Please do not approve this application. And just a quick addendum, I did some research this past week, and I was trying to figure out, is there something I could do in my home to protect my family from these toxins? These toxins are organic compounds, okay? They cannot be filtered out with a micron filter. They cannot be absorbed with a charcoal filter. The only way to get these toxins that are neurotoxins out of the system is to have a reverse osmosis water filtration system, which I looked into. A company to do the project in my home is a $10,000 expense. I don't think a lot of people have that type of budget available to them, and anything less than that is exposing us to these neurotoxins. You cannot boil them out, you can't chlorine them out, they're there, period. The only way to get them out is through reverse osmosis. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, thank you, John. Any other member of the public present wish to speak to this sewer variance application? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Beverly Posey, and I live on Assembly Point. And good evening, Supervisor Stroh and members of the council. Much has been written, and so I shall not repeat any of those statements of grave concern. My family has been at 66 Bay Parkway, Assembly Point, since 1953. We have safely used the water unfiltered until 20 years ago when we installed an ultraviolet water filter system. At that time, it was evident that the water quality was declining, and we continued to see this decline to the point where the ultraviolet system is no longer capable of protecting our health, nor is in the sitting and reporting of harmful algae blooms, is it safe to use the water in any way. Swimming, boating, fishing, or any of the activities we've enjoyed for more than 60 years. So I ask, with the evidence that has been presented, that this board, who has been the leader in the property transfer law, the fertilizer setback law, reducing salt on roads, not give a variance that clearly would be a threat to public health. The HABs are along the property shoreline as seen, photographed, and reported during the last 8 days. And finally, what impact will this have on the economy where tourism is the lifeblood of the lake and the communities in the entire watershed if we continue to grant variances which impact the water quality? Thank you.
All right, and thank you, Beverly. And if you would, yeah, clean up the microphone and desk for me. Thank you. Anybody else present tonight wish to speak to this application? Yes, ma'am?
Many neighbors.
You have to come up to the mic because it all has to be recorded.
Many neighbors sent in letters.
You're Lorraine Carbonate.
I'm Lorraine Carbonine, yes, and I know that many of my neighbors sent in letters, people that weren't able to be here. Will they all be read by the whole board?
No,
No?
not going to read them.
Oh, not tonight, I just mean, will everyone read?
Yes, we will read them.
Okay.
But I thought you meant publicly, and there's quite a few. But Rose, in a little while, is going to go through and kind of give a summary of what we've received so far.
Okay,
Okay? All right, thank you.
thanks.
Anybody else present?
I just have a question. Will you have the letters put into the record?
The letters will be a matter of the record. Will they be put into the minutes?
Versus a summation? I was wondering if you would put the full letters into the record and summary.
The answer to the question is that the last two questions that have arisen are, number one, all letters that are submitted are part of the public record. There's no requirement that they be read aloud, and I would not foist upon the town clerk's office the responsibility of summarizing. I think that's a little, I'd be concerned about that because, some of the letters are long. Mr. Caffrey acknowledged the length of his letter. His would be extraordinarily hard to summarize, I think, not a criticism. I think if you want the town clerk to make note of what letters have been received from whom, you could do that, not required, but they're absolutely, all letters received are part of the public record, absolutely.
What Rose was going to do is state basically who we received them from and whether they're for it or against it. That's it. You don't think that's needed, or
I know for sure that that's not needed.
is there any harm in doing that?
Only that I've been to public meetings where people legitimately tried to characterize something as in favor or opposed, and it wasn't really either, and it wasn't accurately characterized, because sometimes a letter can say at the beginning, we have concerns, and then express the concerns, and if you characterize that letter as opposed, that may not be a reasonable characterization. That's my concern.
All right, so what Rose will do is just list who has sent in information on this particular topic, right? Just say the names, and we'll get to that later, though.
Okay.
Let me go through this. Is there anybody else here present that wishes to speak to this application? All right. Is there anybody watching YouTube? You're welcome to call in, and then I'm going to go to Zoom. So we have 14 attendees, and those of you that came back, what happened is I used my laptop, and I lost power on my laptop. So we're back, and we didn't conduct any business until we got back on. So if there is anybody watching this through YouTube who would like to call in, area code 518-761-8225. And Peter, I believe that we have some people calling in.
No, but quite a few viewers right
Oh, good.
now. The number's up.
All right, so
I mean, the phone.
761-8225. That phone number's on. Anybody that's watching this on YouTube can also see the phone number, right? Okay. All right. I'm just going to go in the order. Florence, Connor, can you hear me? Unmute yourself.
Hello?
Yes, Florence.
I had asked that my letter be read at this meeting this evening.
We're not going to read them, are we? How about if somebody requests that we read them?
You're not obligated to, you can if you want, you're not obligated to. I'd be concerned, your concern would be then if every single person requests their letter be read, you shouldn't treat people differently. It's up to the board.
Florence, we're not going to read them because we feel we'd have to read all of them, and there were numerous. Can you please summarize your thoughts for us?
I would rather not summarize it, but I would like to say that I hope that if these letters are compiled together, that they are read, because when you only receive one letter, it goes to one person, and it's very easy to put it in a pile and just say, oh, let's get that to the let's get to that later, or that we'll not bother with that. We're already
Lawrence, I'm holding up a folder. And in this folder is the correspondence we've gotten today, basically today, on this. We're not going to read that for the record. But if you'd like to make a comment and share your thoughts with us, we would welcome that.
All right, I feel that I will try to shorten and remember what I said. This was a wonderful lot. It was a unique lot that this gentleman ably he was so fortunate to be able to buy it. Then he said he was going to build his own home, and I was quite excited for him. And he came in and asked for one thing. Now he's come and asked for another. And also, by subdividing the lot, he's made a problem for himself. It's a self-created problem. And also, I just want to compliment the town of Queensbury for the many things they've done to protect the lake. You know, they've got the transfer law, and many of the other towns are now saying that they would like to have it. That the salt has been reduced. There's so many things that we have done, but we often give the little things a slide. And this is one of the little things. This is one of the few feet here or there. That few feet makes a big difference way down the line. You may put in a wonderful system today, but like all of us, it gets older and it gets a little weaker, and maybe it's not taken care of. So I think that we should be very careful to make sure that we stick to the rules we've made because they were made for a reason. I'm sorry I don't have my paper in front of me. I could sooner combine some of my thoughts. But I just feel that it's time we stop giving away the things that make us safer and make the lake as pure as we can do it. It's a struggling lake right now. I've been there for 71 years. I know the difference of what it was and what it is, and it makes me very unhappy. Thanks for at least giving me a try.
All right, thank you. And Rose, that was Florence Connor, C-O-N-N-O-R, okay?
I have that, and each board member was presented with a
Okay.
copy.
All right, Florence, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Jackie's next in line, J-E-A-I-I-I, or Jack the Third, I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Hi?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, please. Would you give me your name, please?
Yeah, I'm Dr. John Kelly, a resident of 241 Assembly Point, a resident of 255 Assembly Point, and the owner of over 10 properties commonly known as Bellwood off of Bay Parkway, which we're keeping quite natural. My attorney, John Caffrey, I think did a wonderful job of summarizing our point of view on all of the legalities and coding issues. But I wanted to personally show up as a scientist, an engineer, and a resident and user of Assembly Point in a lake for over 67 years. Not quite as long as Florence, but almost. And I think there are a number of issues with this application, not the least of which technically the applicant has not shown that this is not detrimental to the lake. And I won't repeat all the comments from the previous speakers, but to summarize in my simple few words, this is a bad plan with bad timing, and the applicant has shown bad behavior already with respect to destruction of that lot. So I strongly urge and request that the board deny this request. Thank you.
All right, thank you. You got that, Dr. John Kelly? Anybody else on Zoom? Chris Novinsky, can you hear me?
Yes, Supervisor Stroud, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you very much. I'll be brief. I think a lot of my comments have already been said, but there are numerous concerns regarding the application and the lack of supporting information justifying the variance. Feasible alternatives are available. Information lacking on important natural resources required by the town to be shown, and possible segmentation issues. I encourage the board during deliberations, remember the findings that you need to adhere to under 136.18, that the application contains no information that there are special circumstances or conditions that prevent the strict adherence to provisions of Part 1 of 136. And it justifies that this, the need of this variance. I think Dr. Collins talked about the reduction of the separation to the soil, to the lake and soil, and the impacts that that will have. The application contains no information that the variance would not be detrimental to the purpose of Part 1 or to other adjoining properties or to the plans and policies of the town. We know that there are wetlands on the property as mapped by the Warren County GIS. The failure to provide adequate subsurface soil investigation is, was also mentioned in the policies that the town put forth on septic transfers, on wastewater management districts. Clearly, the town has been a leader. And finally, the application fails to justify that the variance is necessary for the reasonable use of the land. It is a minimum variance required. That's already been spoken to. So I would encourage the town to deny the application as submitted. We understand that there are proposed provisions coming, but we really encourage the town to be very scrutinize anything that comes forth on this application. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Brad. Scott Dubin, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Scott.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I did submit written comments, but I'd like to make a statement, and I will shorten it, shorten what I had written to you. I'm opposing the 30-foot variance that's been requested. This 100-foot requirement helps to protect the lake from nutrient loading and seepage from septic systems, and the soil around the septic system, as had been mentioned earlier, acts as a filter and is able to absorb the effluent. However, that ability degrades over time, so the distance is important to protect water quality, and that's why the town has a 100-foot setback requirement. Distance is merely a layer of protection, and reducing that distance reduces the protection and increases the risk that the effluent can reach the lake over time. And I have not as many years as Lawrence and not as many years as John Gully, but I did just spend my 60th summer on Assembly Point and have come to love the area, and it's a perfect place to be with your family and enjoy the quality of the water, and it's also a recreational and economic asset for the town. And as the town well knows, and Assembly Point residents well know, the property taxes are very high on Assembly Point, and that's because of the lake and the water quality. And if that water quality degrades, the values go down, assessments go down, ratables go down. And this is not to complain at this point about taxes, but just to show that water quality is also a matter that can affect the town's budget. I also point out regarding the hazardous algae bloom that was mentioned a number of times tonight, that I was advised that the Jefferson project has installed a monitoring device in Harris Bay, and that's an indication of their concern about the water quality, and I think this was recently done in response to the hazardous algae bloom that was mentioned. And also mentioned the property includes wetlands and a meandering stream, and the shoreline is very long, and most of it is on a narrow peninsula that curves around to the shallow cove that Mr. Carbonine had mentioned. And the cove is warmer than other areas of the shoreline, and there's visible vegetation, at least during the summer. And since the property is low-lying, effluent is more likely to seep into the lake, and if the septic field is close, or in this case proposed 30 feet closer than normally required, that because of the nature of the property, and the destruction of trees, the nutrients are more likely to flow into the cove and into the other side of the, I guess that would be the east side of the peninsula. And so the real question is whether this is absolutely necessary for this fragile shoreline. And I just wanted to join in with the other Assembly Point residents and ask administer their regulations as they've been intended, and the fact that so many people have spoken out and submitted comments off-season. I mean, most people are not up there now, and during a pandemic and shortly before Thanksgiving, I think is an indication that of the concern for the lake and the quality of the water. And so I just ask that the town take a good look at the application and at the options that are otherwise available, and that they do right by Lake George. And at this stage, deny the 30-foot variance request. And I just want to thank you very much for this opportunity.
All right, Scott, thank you. Scott Dubin, D-U-B-I-N. Anybody else on Zoom? Adamson's using an old form of Zoom. I have to add her as a panelist to allow her to talk. Her form of Zoom. Zoom changes almost daily. Lisa Adamson, are you there? Lisa Adamson? Can't seem to get it rolling. Lisa, we can't hear you and I can't connect with you. You have a form of Zoom that the new Zoom will not deal with, even making you a co-host. Can you call in, Lisa, if you're watching? Call in at area code 518-761-8225. Lisa Adams. All right, Lisa sends me a message. I was just going to suggest that we offer the applicant an opportunity to meet with the task force to create this into a showcase project of what we could do right on that property. All right, thank you, Lisa. Anybody else on Zoom? Has the system been approved by the New York State Department of Health? No, and I don't believe they have to. We operate as the local Board of Health, and then it goes from us to the Adirondack Park Association if we do deal with it.
Agency. Adirondack Park Agency.
Agency, thank you. Another one asking for a Beth something or other, I don't know the last name. asking for my father, Fred Hart, 113 Assembly Point. All right. All right, anybody else? All right, now I got the full list of Zoom back. And everybody that's asked to talk has talked. And we haven't had anybody call in. So, Rose, would you go through as to just tell us who has sent us something in the matter of the record?
Yes, I have 11 letters. They are from Joan Anderson, Nancy Burke, Florence Connor, Charlie Crew, Scott Dubin, Mike Kelly, Brian Hogan, Beverly Posey, Lorraine Ruffing, Chris Novitsky, Lake George Waterkeeper, and John Caffrey representing John and Honey Joe Kelly. They will all be on file in the town clerk's office.
All right, thank you. And like I said, most of these we got this afternoon or even as early as minutes before this meeting. So that's going to take us a while. We will give due diligence. This board will read through the material that you have sent and you have shared with us tonight. And I very much appreciate everything that you said. And it will go into consideration. I'm not sure where this will go. We're not going to act on it today. Any other thoughts on behalf of the board before we move out of the Board of Health? Okay. Then I'll entertain a motion to move out of the local Board of Health.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Councilperson Ferone, seconded by Councilperson Freer. All those in favor of moving out of the local Board of Health, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, it's unanimous, and I just want to remind you that the public hearing is left open. So any further comments will be welcome. Email, snail mail, whatever. Okay, and I did take lots of notes, okay? Next, we have another public hearing, if you'll introduce that to the public, Rose.
This is a public hearing on a local law to amend town code provisions relating to water and sewer services and charges.
All right, in this resolution, and there is a public hearing on this tonight, is to do several things. And we do have the superintendent of water and director of wastewater with us. Chris Harrington's here tonight. So this is to discuss, eliminate the wastewater department's involvement in constructing sewer laterals. It would become the sole responsibility of the property owner. Code sections 136-55 and 136-95 would make that clear. Again, to make it the responsibility of the property owner to install the lateral. Another change being proposed is allow the wastewater director to waive the requirement for separate building sewers. Code section 136 through 56, sorry. And I'm going to ask him to explain that, so he'll come down here in a minute. The third provision is to provide that the town board may make changes to sewer rents by resolution upon 5 days public notice. Code sections 136, 137, and 136-137.2. And the fourth proposal, generically, is allow water service to be discontinued upon resolution of the town board without a hearing Code Section 173-29. And so we have a public hearing on this tonight, but I would ask the Water Superintendent, Wastewater Director, Chris Harrington, to please come forward and elaborate a little bit more on the changes in the town code that you are proposing to the town board and we are proposing to the public.
Thanks, John. We had a workshop on this about 6 weeks ago. The first thing that John mentioned is about we want to just clean up the code a bit. We want to kind of mimic what we do over the years, particularly with house connections. House connections are a little bit different for sewer than water. House connections are the sole purvey of the homeowner, and we have never gotten involved installing house connections, nor do we. So there's a couple of things. We don't have the crew really available to do those. Those get very messy. Don't want to get involved in that. And if a contractor, we hired a contractor, that would be prevailing wage, would cost about 30% more. So we have never been involved in establishing, installing house connections. We've just reviewed plans, we've issued permits, and we've done inspections. So I just want to make sure that the code actually represents what we do. So that's pretty straightforward. That's just cleaning up the code. Second thing is about building doing sewers for buildings on a property. If you have 4 different buildings, each building is supposed to be directly connected to the sewer. That's a very high mark. So I want the code to be a little easier so that with the help of council, we can have something written where we can make sure that if that property is subdivided in the future, that there is something in the deed that spells out who's responsible for what. So they don't have these issues down the road where, oh, well, the sewer's broken, we have to go on their piece of land, and it becomes a real bloody mess. So this is to have the private homeowner or property owner to put the deed together in such a way that eliminates problems down the road. So I think the way council drafted it was appropriate, and I think we should give the property owners a little more leeway from that stringency of the code. There's particularly one property on Corinth Road that a realtor asked me about, and I'm like, well, that's a little difficult because right now you have to put 2 grinder pumps in. You know, a grinder pump costs about $10,000 each. That's 20 grand they'd have to put in, instead of maybe doing something that you know, could meet you know, future requirements in case something did happen. It could be written in a deed. You just want the property owner down the road, when they buy something subdivided, know, hey, look, you have to look at this lateral here, and that you guys share, like share a driveway, something like that. So that's part of that code. The sewer rents one, we want to match a little more like water. Water and sewer are very different. The law treats those very differently. What we want to do with the sewer rents, instead of codifying it, we want to establish them as we do with water, where you can do by resolution. The tricky part with sewer rents, you still need a hearing. Okay, it's not going to be a public hearing, doesn't be codified, but you still have to have a hearing. So we're trying to make it match water and the wastewater rents, to try to make them as close as we can. That still requires a hearing. And the last one is discontinuation of water service. People will still have due process. You can only do it by resolution. You will see, the board will see, in case we do feel that somebody should have their water service discontinued, we will reach out to them. We'll give them every chance imaginable before we ask the board for a resolution to discontinue water service. They will be notified. They will have the opportunity to come to sit down with the board during a session like this and explain why they believe we're being unfair in discontinuing water service. So I know, George, you had a little bit of issue about due process there. So I do believe that they still will have due process. But we eliminate the hearing part, which becomes very laborious. We went through this one time, and it really turned into their attorney, our attorney, hearings, this, that, and the other thing. And I feel that a resolution, after they give me so many chances, would do the same thing. Some towns don't have anything. I think they could just shut the water off without, it's not even code. Guilderland just had discontinued water. You know, I guess to purvey the water superintendent, and shut the water off, just like they did in Chinatown. The movie Chinatown, where the water superintendent had all the power. Imagine that. So those are just, you know, clean up the code, makes things a little more smooth, flow a little more smoothly. So I asked the board to consider those, and if the public has anything to say, I'd welcome to hear what they may have to say. So,
Yeah. flow seems to be the core of your whole existence.
Yes, right.
Questions from the town board? All right, I may ask you to come back if we get some questions that we need your expertise on.
Okay.
Okay. So the public hearing is now open. So anybody that wishes to speak to the proposed changes in the town code that we have described, I want to give you an opportunity to speak to them. Is there anybody present who would like to speak to any of the changes in the code that we just described? No one present. Anybody from YouTube like to call in at area code 518-761-8225? Anybody on Zoom? Okay, apparently there's no interest on behalf of the public to speak to the proposed changes. I'm hoping that they think that they're pretty practical changes we're offering to our town code. I happen to think they are pretty practical.
John, I have a question for Chris. Because this came up in LA where, so can you give me a couple of examples on why you would recommend and we would pursue discontinuing water?
Meter man put in a meter. They find out they have a connection before the meter. We ask them to remove it. They give us a hard time. They don't want to remove it. We say, you have to remove it. So that goes back and forth.
Where we see that is with people that water the lawns.
Yeah.
They break in before the meter.
Yeah, okay.
Another one might be an old meter we want to get into. You know, a meter that's used, it's beyond its useful life, or we want to put a radio read on it. You know, we can't get in. We can letters and put the radio read on so that we can read it automatically. We've had one property owner doesn't like the stance of a certain town board member with regards to a certain project in town, you know, and we can't get in because of that reason. They're trying to link it. Not having a backflow preventer in. They have a well, they have municipal water. Meter men, this is where it happens a lot when the meter men go in to once we get in to you know, change meters out or problems, you know, meter men go looking around, make sure that there's no backflow preventer that's needed or outdated meter, or again, pretty much the big one is having that hose bib before the meter.
Okay. And my question to council is, you know, this came up in LA where they just decided because they were having parties against the COVID violations, they were shutting off water and power. Has there been any determination that that's not a good idea?
I don't know what you mean by determination. We're not aware of court decisions, but as the superintendent described, there are some due process elements built into this. Not the least of which is that in order for the town board to adopt an order, it has to happen in an open public town board meeting. There are also provisions in there about 30 days notice of that order, time to comply and the like.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome.
Any further questions for the town board? Haven't heard anything more from the public? I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion to approve the amended town code as presented tonight.
I'll introduce.
Motion made by Councilperson Medevere.
I'll second.
By Councilperson Perone. Roll call vote on this, please. Rose?
Councilperson Medevere.
Yes.
Breer.
Yes?
Perone.
Yes.
And Strout.
Yeah. Next, we have resolutions. We have 13 resolutions before us. And I go through it and describe all 13 of the resolutions. The public knows what they are. And if you have any concerns, I will give you an opportunity to share your concerns or thoughts with us on those resolutions. Now, if you have a thought on some town issue, that you want to share with the town board, but it has nothing to do with the resolutions, I will give you that opportunity. A privilege of the floor. It'll be toward the end of the meeting. This part of the meeting, however, is just on the resolutions. So, if you introduce Resolution 4.1, Rose?
A resolution reappointing John Mossing to Town of Queensbury Recreation Commission.
All right, we have a great Recreation Commission, and John Mossing is one of those individuals that helps make it as great as it is. We appreciate the fact that he's willing to re-up for that position. And thank you, John Mossing, and town board will consider that as resolution 4.1. 4.2,
Resolution amending resolution number 354, 2020 to correct capital project number.
all right, this was a mistake, and we've already discussed the Adaptive Signal Control Technologies capital project. We have a grant that's going to look into feasibility of using adaptive signal control technologies in the Quaker Aviation Road corridor going between Lower Warren or River Street as it is in that junction where Quaker Road comes out, all the way up to exit 19. The adaptive control technologies will monitor queuing, flow of traffic, speed of traffic, and manage the whole system to maximum efficiency. There are other places that are using this. We have grant money, thanks to AGFTC and Aaron Frankfeld and Jack Mance, to be able to see if this type of technology would help us. I certainly hope so. I certainly think so. In any event, we just had a wrong number down in terms of the capital project. This just corrects that number. 4.3,
Resolution authorizing transfer of funds and establishing revenues and increasing appropriations in Highway Garage Capital Project, Fund Number 208.
all right, this is just a switch over to where we knew where it was, to put it where we needed it. This is something we knew 3 years ago, but now it's time to move it forward so we can pay for our garage. We planned the garage in a manner that we could pay for it, and so we've saved for it. And we did not want to take out a bond that would become a burden to folks later down the road. The economy could get worse. Some are predicting it will. All right, we want to be as flexible and agile as possible with our budget. We do not want to be burdened with things because a bond, you don't have any choice. You have to pay it. If you don't create it, then you don't have to pay it. So it gives us the flexibility of dealing with economic downturns in a lot more efficient manner that the public, I think, will appreciate if we go there. Hopefully we never go there, but if we do, we're trying to prepare us for the worst case scenario. In any event, this is just shifting money over where we anticipated to go all along. 4.4,
Resolution authorizing acceptance of $5,000 donation from Warren County Safe and Quality Bicycling Organization, Inc. towards Halfway Brook Trail signage.
all right, and I want to thank the Warren County Safe and Quality Bicycle Organization for this donation, for signage for the Halfway Brook Trail. That's nice that they made this offer, and the town could use it. Signage is not as cheap as you think it is. For the sake of disclosure, both Harrison Greer and I are on the board, and I think perhaps we should probably recuse ourselves just for the sake of, we don't have to, we don't have any money we're making out of this, but for the sake of absolute transparency and independency, well, I think we should do that, but,
In which case the resolution won't pass.
Right.
oh, because we don't have enough voters.
All we have to do is disclose it, right? We don't,
I'd be very comfortable with disclosure, and I don't think you.
All right, then we'll go to Plan B, disclosing it and making sure we're open and transparent that way. All right, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I should have thought of that myself. 4.5,
Resolution setting public hearing on proposed amendment to ordinance number 30 and its subsequent amendments concerning increase in fees associated with building permit process.
all right, occasionally, every so often, we don't want it to go 10 years and then have big fee increases. We want to increase the fees. For example, Accessory structure. It was 20 cents per square foot. We're going to go to 23 cents a square foot for the purpose of a fee schedule. If you come in, not expensive. The cell tower was $150, now being proposed at $165. A shed, 301 plus square feet. This is garage fee. It was 75, we're proposing to make it 85. Solar panels was 75, we're thinking of making 85, proposing to do 85. Pavilion, pole barn, canopy, 75, 85 is the proposed amount. In other words, small increases in our fee schedule from the Building and Codes Department. We're not acting on this other than to set the public hearing for December 7th. So I'm just want to give the public a little idea of the fee schedule. There's more there, but I'm not going to go through all of it, but they're generally small increases that are increases needed to cover the costs. They help cover the costs. They don't cover all the costs, but they do help cover the costs. So we'll have a public hearing on this if this town board approves this resolution on December 7th. 4.6.
It's a resolution authorizing amendment of town water department water rate schedule.
All right, water use rates and fees. Again, small increases. Amount of water from 0 to 8,000 gallons. We currently charge 30. This is proposing 30 to 50, so another $2.50. 8,001 gallons to 3.25 million gallons is $2.20 per 1,000 gallons. It was, or is, proposed to be $2.25. And then anything over 3.25 million gallons is 78 cents per 1,000 gallons. We only have two users there, that's West Mountain and the Great Escape, and we're proposing to make that 85 cents per 1,000 gallons. And the quarterly flat fee is currently $135. We would make it $145 if this resolution passes. 4.7.
Resolution adopting new tapping fee schedule for town water department.
All right, tapping fee schedule. Tap size 3/4 inch. It is $375. This proposes $400. 3/4 inch long, $375. This proposes to make it $400. 1 inch short is $575. This proposal is $600. 1 inch long is $575. This proposal is $600. 1.5 inch short is $780. This proposal $805. Same thing with the long. 2 inch is proposing to go from $1,000 to $1,050. So small increases, but again, to help pay for costs. Is 4.7. 4.8.
Resolution authorizing water rate increase for Shore Colony Water District.
All right, increase the flat rate from $175 annually to $200 annually, and I understand it's been a long time since we've increased Shore Colony's rate, so that is to help pay for the cost of the water district. And again, small increase. 4.9.
Resolution affirming and ratifying purchase of skid steer loader for use by Highway Department.
Okay, well, this town board already approved the skid loader. What happened, and Highway Superintendent Dave Dool is here, and Dave, do you mind if I ask you to just explain what happened here?
Yes, Dave Dool, down at Queensbury Highway Superintendent. The skid steer loader, we entered into agreement with a vendor to purchase the machine. We were guaranteed it was available to us in the time frame that we had to purchase and pay for the machine. The vendor could not ultimately deliver that model machine, even though we were guaranteed and we had entered into an agreement to purchase. So they offered to upgrade the machine at no cost to the town, in good faith.
All right, but this isn't the same machine, it's a better machine, but it's not the same machine. So this board, because it's not the same machine, still has to prove it, even if it's an upgrade.
Yes, correct.
Okay, and that's what this resolution is all about. It's the purchase of a 230, we already authorized the purchase of the 232 D3,
Yes,
and we're getting for the same price, the better model, the 242 D3.
correct.
Okay, just, all right, thank you, Dave.
All right, thank you.
410,
Order setting public hearing concerning proposed extension to Queensbury Consolidated Water District to serve a portion of Mountain Terrace Estate subdivision and an out-of-district parcel.
all right, there are 6 parcels. They're calling them the Mountain Terrace Estate subdivision. They're all along Luzerne Road. They were never put into the water district. This is a proposal to put them in the water district. There's a map plan and report that's been done and so forth. And there's plenty of water there. The superintendent already confirmed that, so that's not a problem. So this resolution is to set a public hearing on this matter, to extend the water district to those 6 lots on Luzerne Road called the Mountain Terrace Estate subdivision. That public hearing is being proposed December 7th. If this town board approves this resolution, we'll have that public hearing. And 411,
Resolution approving out-of bills, warrant 11/17/2020.
okay, run date of November 12th and a payment date of November 17th, 2020, totaling $919,737.61. 412,
Resolution ratifying adoption of revised Town of Queensbury COVID-19 pandemic response plan.
okay, so this is an updated plan, and it's updated in a few areas, but the primary area this has been updated is with the travel policy. We follow the travel policy set by New York State. It's a travel advisory, actually. We've adopted this, this is adopting the same travel advisory, plus each of the departments has their own COVID plans. That's part of our main plan. We've been commended from several different sources and authorities for our COVID planning here at the town of Queensbury. This is one where, you know, if an employee travels, they have to come back. Of course, this gets reported to the Warren County Health Department, and they need to be tested. And in 3 days, you have the test results back, and if it's negative, COVID negative, you can return to work. You're expected to return to work. If it's positive, then you have to quarantine for 2 months, 2 weeks, excuse me. Probably will be 2 months. 2 weeks. So it also says that town employees travel, it's a decision they make. They will be expected to use their leave time, that is their vacation, sick days, personal days, floating holidays, etc., for the required quarantine time. Now, if you have no leave days, you used them all up, then you're not going to get paid for those days you have to stay out for quarantine because you made the choice to travel. This is not a case of where you got a community spread. That's not the case, because then you have exemption. This is the case where you've made the decision to travel, you returned back, you're COVID positive. All right, now, and I also said to the town board, and I only got one response back, so I left it. Employees have asked me if they can allow at-home work. In other words, they don't have to use their leave time, and then they'll still get paid for the day. Well, not all employees can do that. So I said, fine, I'll put a clause in there saying you can do it, but that must be approved by the town board. In other words, we would take a look at the individual. Can that individual actually do that work from home in a comprehensive full-time manner? Then we'll give them credit, we won't let them use the leave days, but we'll have to look at this each individually, and it'll be a town board decision. Okay? So that's in there, so that's the plan. 413,
Resolution to amend 2020 budget.
all right, that's just shifts where there wasn't needed, the shifts where there are needed, changing time, changing circumstances. All right, those are the 13 resolutions before us tonight. Any member of the public present wish to speak to any of those 13 resolutions before this town board tonight? None present. Any member of the watching YouTube wish to call in, to ask a question, or share a thought, on any of the resolutions before us tonight? Any folks on Zoom? There's only 2 left. I guess I bored them to death going through the resolutions. All right, if you're on YouTube, you want to call in and share a thought on any of the 12 resolutions, it's area code 518-761-8225.
I have 13.
Okay, I'm hearing no interest on behalf of the public on our 13 resolutions before us. Are there any resolutions that town board members wish to speak to or have pulled for a roll call vote?
Just to reiterate on 4.4, full disclosure, I serve on
On the board
Board-
of directors for
yeah,
the Warren
the County Safe and Quality
Organization, or they're trying to rebrand themselves as the Adirondack Cycling Advocates.
right.
Warren County Safe and Quality Bicycle Organization is a little long. Same mission. All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolutions 4.1 through 413.
I'll introduce.
Moved by Councilperson Medevere, seconded by Councilperson Ferrell. Roll call vote on those 13 resolutions.
Councilperson Freer,
Yes.
Barone,
Yes.
Stroud,
Yes.
and Medevere.
Yes.
All right, so they pass. All right, now comes privilege of the floor. Any member of the public that wishes to speak to the town board about a town issue, this is your opportunity. Any member present, Dave?
Dave Duell, Town of Queensbury Highway Superintendent. I just want to take a few moments to acknowledge the passing of William Bill Hughes Sr. on Sunday, November 15th. Bill was a 37-year employee of the Highway Department, and he was instrumental in my employment with the town. It was a day in January in 1989. I ran into Bill in the doctor's office, and he said, "Dave, what are you up to?" I said, "Oh, not too much." He says, "What are you doing for work?" I says, "Currently, Bill, I'm unemployed. I got laid off Christmas Eve day." And he said, "Well, we're looking for a part-time wing guy." He said, "Why don't you come up, fill out your application?" And I did so. And here I stand today as a superintendent of the Highway Department, which I want to thank Bill for that. So, yeah, I just want to offer our thoughts and prayers on my behalf and the Highway Department to Bill and his family at this time.
And on behalf of the community,
Thank you.
I want to remind the family that we deeply appreciate the good work for our community, making a much nicer place that Bill did. And I'm very sorry for hearing of this passing.
Thank you.
Thoughts are with the family too. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Any other member of the public wish to speak? Only 2 attendees for Zoom. Anybody on Zoom? Anybody on YouTube? If you're on YouTube, wish to call in? Very
I'm in Zoom,
cool.
but I'm,
Yes, Florence, go ahead.
yes.
Florence Connor.
Yes, I wonder if there was anything that Queensbury could do about the deer problem on Assembly Point. We seem to be overrun by deer, and with the tick population and the deer population, is there anything you can do? I have called in Albany, I have spoken to different people in Warrensburg. No one seems to have a solution.
No, Florence and I too made those phone calls. 6 of them. Well, because the first one said that I needed to speak to so-and-so. And when I spoke to so-and-so, they said, oh no, you need to speak to so-and-so. So I called the second so-and-so, and they said, oh no, it's not me, you need to speak to so-and-so. 6 phone calls, Florence. I finally got, I'm sorry. I finally got, yeah, go ahead.
I called and I said, well, can we do such and such? Can we shoot them? Well, no, you can't shoot them. Can we anesthetize them and take them somewhere else? Oh no, we'll be taking germs somewhere else. There's always an excuse, so I'd like to hear the excuse they gave you.
Well, I was asking, because I had a Assembly Point person ask me, they said, at least could it be posted with signage that they're going to be hunting in the, how do you pronounce that, Tony?
Oreopa.
Whatever Tony said. And so they said, well, bow hunting is allowed in there, and that's most likely what they would do. Both regular bow and crossbow. They said anything else would probably be illegal because of the proximity to residential areas. But so I understand that there is a hunting season. He told me what it was, and it is on the DEC website what the hunting season is for bows. So they would be allowed to be in there hunting the deer with bows, and because there is an apparent need to control the population, because we do get the nuisance calls of there being too many deers in everyone's backyard eating the garbage and everything else, and the deer population needs to be controlled there. So there is some hunting allowed, but I understand it's only bow hunting.
Yes, and they only shoot maybe 1, maybe 2.
Yeah.
I suggest that they anesthetize them and shoot them right where they are. And they said, no, they couldn't do that. And I said, and then feed them to the home, I don't know, the home people that they feed food to. And they said, no, they couldn't shoot them because maybe the anesthetizing juice had gotten into their bloodstream and it wouldn't be good meat to eat. So you name it, they've got an excuse for it. But meanwhile, they are there, and you can see 15 of them in a bunch sometimes, and they're too many.
Yes, well, hopefully this gets out to the bow hunters and they go up and help you with the problem.
Okay, we'll advertise next year.
All right, okay. Thank you, Florence. Anything else?
Well, thank you for being there and giving us your time. And we really do appreciate you, even though we don't often say so.
Well, we appreciate that. We remain servant to you. All right, have a good night. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else on Zoom? All right, so that just about does it for our privilege of the floor. Let's move on to town board discussions, and let's start with George.
Wow, this was a good week to have me go first, because I get to beat out the other guys about wishing everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Aw.
But I guess there's been a lot in the news about, our all celebrating this holiday and coming together, and I just think we all need to continue to do what we've been doing all along, where we have to remain distant, wear our masks. I know that's tough when we're together in the home and celebrating a holiday, but just try to be as safe as we possibly can, and we'll get through these Thanksgiving and Christmas and into 2021. That's all I've got.
I'm a little bit worried about the get-togethers for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and you know what that's going to do with COVID.
I know.
really gonna not be good. Along with New Year's Day, but we'll keep this tempered a little bit because 11 o'clock New Year's Day, you're gonna be right here. Yeah, we do the first of the year resolutions and swearing in. As a matter of fact, because Tim McNulty's here, and he'll get sworn in on January 1st, if you're here. So, and Eric Schweiker will swear him in as returning town judge. Anything else, George?
That's it, thank you.
Thank you. Harrison?
Nope, but, well, just let me say that it was good to hear that a second vaccine for COVID is 94+% effective in the initial test. So there seems to be a light at the end of the tunnel to get back to a more reasonable or normal situation. So I'm hopeful about that, but happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Does this other new form of, or new vaccine, does that have to be stored at 90 degrees?
No, -20, and it can stay in your refrigerator for a month.
Oh, all right.
My daughter gave me the rundown on it today. She knows more about it than I do, that's for sure.
Anything else, Harrison?
Nope.
All right, thank you.
No, just the same for me. Just wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. I don't know if it's going to be possible this year. It's certainly a different year than we've ever been used to. My daughter out in Boston, you know, I don't know if she'll be able to even come home at this point. So we'll see what happens. But happy Thanksgiving, just the same.
Yes, and thank you. That's thoughtful. All right, I have a small file. The rules, all right. There's Leon Steve's Preserve at the end of Division. There is the Hudson Point Preserve and Trails, adjacent to the Leon Steve's, over in the Hudson River area. There's the Rush Pond Trail. There's the Lower Watershed, which is the new Halfway Brook Trail. Those areas, those parklands, those preserves, those watersheds are not for ATVs and dirt bikes. They're not for those types of things. They are prohibited. And so I'm just, you know, I'm supposed to remind people that in those areas I just mentioned, ATVs and dirt bikes, those types of motorized vehicles are not allowed. They are not allowed. Okay. They said, would you make an announcement? Maybe you make a difference. We don't have to go and arrest everybody. They'll just abide by it. Well, it may take time. Okay. Also, we get these, you know, we have some, we're very lucky to have some outstanding organizations associated with Lake George. You have the Fund for Lake George, you have the LGA, the Lake George Park Commission, Lake George Land Conservancy, the Darien Freshwater Institute, we have the Jefferson Project going on, and we do receive bulletins from those, and it gives us updates as to what they're doing. The LGA news, Walt Lender talks about forging ahead. He's the executive director. But Kristen Wild, also, she's the director of education, and she goes out to local schools. And they have a nice article on what is hydrilla. And it's a darn good thing that we don't have it in Lake George. I know other states have hydrilla problems, and it's costing millions to control. Hydrilla will grow an inch a day. And it will cloud out everything and destroy habitats. We don't want it. That's why we have the bulk inspection stations, and everyone's alert to it. But the other things that the Lake George Association has done, they put in a diffuser pond. They put in a sediment basin with cleanouts. They're installing porous concrete sidewalks, experimenting with that. They did a nice project up on Boom Bay and Putnam with a swale clean out. And the list goes on of all the good things that they do for Lake George. And the same thing with the Lake George Land Conservancy. And they have their newsletter for the fall and winter of 2020 they put out. And all the good things that they're doing. Of course, they conserve land, keep it from getting developed. It's human development that causes pollution. Mother Nature just has a beautiful system. If you left it alone, it works. Doesn't pollute anything. Everything remains in harmony. It only took a few million years to develop it. Humankind can go in and destroy that balance real quick. All right, so the more that we keep Lake George natural and preserved in a natural way, the better the water quality is going to be. And Lake George Land Conservancy works to do that. And they talk about the Woldagid outbreak, and they're on top of it. I know the LGA's on top of it, and I know the Fund for Lake George. The Fund for Lake George has asked us for, what, 6,000 or 7,000 contribution for their Fight the Algal efforts. And I think I sent that out a couple weeks ago. If there's support for that, then I'll put together a resolution. And we'll put in our share. We already do. We put $30,000 in towards a bulk inspection system. You know, and it was mentioned tonight, the town of Queensbury is very proactive when it comes to the environment. So I just want to thank these organizations. They're all doing great things. Also, Dave's here, and I do, Dave, have people that appreciate your efforts. I know that you hear just the opposite. Here's one. Thank you for repairing the 2 catch basins and the 60-foot a new culvert pipe and the drainage swale and on somebody's driveway. I don't want to mention their name, but you probably know on Klein Avenue. They're very thankful for what you did over there. And Ash Drive, I got not only an email, but I got a comment from people that live over on Ash Drive thanking you for your stormwater controls that you just implemented over there. And, you know, Dave and his guys are busy. And I think most people do appreciate your efforts. Not everybody takes the time to write. I get it. I mean, we get paid for being public servants, but it is nice hearing things that people do appreciate it. We are trying to make Queensbury a better place to live. All right, and that's it for me tonight. Anything else we go to the order?
So, the speed signs that we talked about the other day, are we collecting data and they're working now?
They're working.
They're all working, and they're up and working now.
I'll be curious to see what kind of data we get out of it.
They told me I was going too fast.
Yeah, me too. Guilty as charged.
Well, that's good.
I wasn't ready for it.
If you hit the exact mileage, it tells you you're going too fast. So if it's 35, you just hit that 35. It
But
tells you.
I wasn't going too fast.
No, I was doing like 38, but it was flashing at me. So.
Yeah. So I think they're working,
Yes.
and I see people slow down. I'm seeing the brakes in front of me. So they're working.
The one on Sweet Road, when you turn off of Country Club, I think is too close to the corner.
Yeah,
You-
it is. George thought that too
Yeah.
when we put it there, but it is before the bike trail, so
Yeah.
we wanted to have some kind of warning.
That's
It
what we
might
were
be
trying to
more effective.
accomplish.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
it did slow me down, you know, but it's just hard to get going much faster
Right.
than that. But
Yeah. All right. So I want to thank Joe Barlow and Jeff Jackson and Luck TV, Peter Faith and Faith Productions. I want to thank the public for being here tonight, both on YouTube, here physically, and on Zoom. And I want to thank Town Council Mark Shatner and Deputy Town Clerk Rose Mellon. And town board members, thank you. Yes, Amanda McGee was feeling well, so she did the right thing by staying home. All right. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, moved by Councilman Perone, seconded by Councilperson freer. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.